in the gun community, they say the day you actually have to use your firearm to protect yourself will be like the best day and the worst day of your life. The Second Amendment does not grant you the right or the authority to commit crimes, right? That sparked something in my head of like, man, I can't be out here exposed and vulnerable. Nobody's gonna help you.
They broke into my mom's car. I said to myself then, because y'all did something to my mom, if I had a gun,
It would have been on. Yeah. I am the militia.
I
And
am the
we'll get
militia.
into that because that word throws people off. So we'll talk about that too.
Do I go that route of trying to meet evil with force, or do I go the route of trying to meet evil with grace?
I don't think that there should be really a rule against an automatic weapon. It wouldn't be so I could feel like I could bump into somebody in the club and I don't care no more. You know,
What?
We got a problem. We got a problem. You know, stepping on J's like with no regard, bro. No.
Pod is good
All the time.
and all the time.
Pod is good.
And back at the Pod is Good studio, my man Dub City.
What's up, family? Come on, come on.
How you been, good sir?
Chilling, man. I'm feeling like a champion. You feel what I'm
Here you go.
feeling like a champ, baby.
Hey, well, I'm over here on the walk of shame. Just
Oh man, everything is feeling good, man. Everything is beautiful. Yeah, of course, you know, loving that football season. But
congratulations.
hey, salute,
Y'all
salute,
deserve
salute.
it. Let me tell you,
I know we'll do more stuff about that in the future. So,
dude.
I
Not
can't wait
only
to get
do
in.
not only did y'all deserve it based on what I saw on the field,
Talk about it.
but even as a hey, Cowboy fans out there, don't be mad at me. Don't be. This is my boy. Okay, this is my boy.
Yeah, boy.
I had to, once I started seeing how y'all moved in free agency. Like once I heard about the deals and how what's it, Howie
Roseman. He was focused, man. He was focused.
How he was, how he took, one trade and then packaged that with a draft pick and then put that together and gave that to the Dolphins and then took their second round and next thing you know he had Slay and I'm like, yo, that is how you build a championship team. That is, the Cowboys are not that. We are not that at all. We ain't been that since the 90s. Okay? I'm just keeping it gangster. Mm-hmm. Y'all know how to build a squad. And that's why you always, as Jerry says, right around the rim. We like to just stay around the rim. We right there. Whatever.
Right, boy.
Y'all actually doing it right. So
yeah,
bravo
man.
to y'all, man.
Yeah, man. So that's what it is. But football isn't everything, man. So I'm really excited about this discussion.
Yeah.
We've gone back and forth a bunch of times, and we're trying to get to this. So I'm excited. I'm excited, man.
And let's get one thing straight right away.
Yep.
Even after all this is done, we still going out shooting. Like, what I'm saying? We still
hey, most certainly, baby. Okay. We're gonna hit the range. We're gonna hit the range and we're gonna get that hands-on type of relationship with the Second Amendment and really get it understood.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you my modest background with firearms, and then I'm gonna let you just unleash what you know, because you are far, far more enthralled in that world than I've ever been. I mean, the first gun I saw, I might have been around 13, 14. My dad had a Colt 45 revolver. I believe it was a Colt. I know it was a revolver. I know that for a fact. And I remember him asking me, I think we went camping with his friend Bert. And shout out to Cody and Kelsey. And he asked me did I want to shoot it. And I was like, nah, I'm good. No, sirree, Bob. And it wasn't until I was probably in my early 30s and I went to the LA Gun Club with my homeboy Eric, and that was the first time I really like shot a gun. You know what I'm saying? Really, I had a Glock 40 and got a chance to like see what that felt like. And then I tried a couple of other guns. He brought his gun. And that was my first time really around it and got a chance to feel the power and learn the true respect of it. You know what I mean? When you see
Yeah.
guns on TV and movies and whatever, there's a distance, right? I mean, I guess like
Yes.
anything else in life, there's a distance. When you're there and you feel it reverberate through you,
Yeah.
you understand like, oh,
Yeah. The
oh,
respect and responsibility, it kicks in real quick.
immediately.
Real quick. Yeah.
Immediately. So since then, I went to a few gun ranges. Me and my wife went to a range with my uncle. Don't have any firearms in the house yet, but we are planning on getting a few for protection and just for
Yeah.
overall understanding and comfort. You know what I mean? Because I do feel like even as a grown man, I'll be honest and say I don't have a comfort level around them. I know safety pretty well because my boy Eric teaches a safety class, so he kind of put me on right away what not to do, where not to point, where how not to have your finger on the trigger, like all of that
Yeah.
from the jump before I even held one.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but that's all I know. So
Mhm.
what I want to get into with you is your background in firearms. I think that's a good place to kind of like lay the foundation, and then let's get into the thick of it. All right.
Okay, for sure. For sure. Um, I'll say like I think I got into firearms like as an average person where I didn't really care one way or the other about having a gun. Most of the stuff I heard about was either like, you know, gun violence, gang violence, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I wasn't afraid of guns necessarily, but I didn't necessarily want to be around anyone who had a gun. I didn't want to, I didn't want to, I wanted to keep a hands off approach. And then, things like movies, watching Predator, Terminator, stuff like that made me think, man, guns are really cool. But still, again, that was just something that was kind of far off. When I turned, I think I was about 16, 15 or 16, my brother-in-law, I'm sorry, my stepbrother, he came back from the military and he had a 1911, which is just a style of handgun. And he was telling me how he was into firearms now, and he took me and my dad shooting. And from jump, just the way the gun looked, it didn't look like any other gun I had seen. Usually, I'd see something like a Glock
Mm,
or a shotgun, some kind of machine gun from watching like Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. So I had in my mind, like if I was going to draw a gun, it would look like this. The
right.
1911 particular styling, and I was like, man, this is actually a beautiful gun. So I kind of started getting this different type of relationship with firearms to where I was intrigued with the craftsmanship or just how a gun can be beautiful, right?
Mm,
Um, and then so from that experience, they were much louder than I thought. They were much harder to shoot straight than I thought. So I was like, as a kid, I was like, I'm always gonna get a gun one day, right? I'm 15.
yeah.
I'm like, when I turn 18, I'm gonna get a gun. I'm gonna get this same 1911 as my brother.
Right.
And then I turned 18. I was like, man, these they cost way too much. I thought a gun you could just like go. I don't know what amount of money I thought I was gonna have to spend, but I thought it can't be more than a Nintendo 64, right? So
Right.
like I was
Right.
like that gives me hours and hours and hours of enjoyment, right? So this can't be more than that, and they're considerably more than that. So that kind of set me back, and I didn't see a reason to have one. It would have only oh yes, yes, yes. So
Mm,
I didn't really have a reason to have one. I didn't know anything about the Second Amendment. I didn't know anything about that. I was still relatively a kid, so I didn't think about me protecting my family or anything like
mm,
that.
yeah.
So it was more like just for fun. I went shooting once. It was a great time. So it was like basically can't really afford one, so one day I'll get one. Then once I got married, I started thinking like, we had our own place, and I'm like, yeah, man, I should really definitely, it's about that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I, I had the had like the machete under the thing, had the bat next to the dress.
Hold on, bro. Why you just name both of my weapons too?
Hey, I
Look,
knew we were gonna get there eventually, man. I want to get there for sure, for sure.
all right, I'm a chill. I'm a
So
chill.
I had to get that, man. So that was my first little start, and then over the years, nothing really ever happened to where I had anything going on to where I was nervous or had to go outside in the middle of the night. It wasn't really anything like that. So you kind of out of sight, out of mind. And then just honestly, politically, things started getting a little more hot, and I started seeing more and more stuff around, and the threat of violence was just became more and more prevalent and more obvious. And then just certain issues. I live in a fairly safe neighborhood, but just overall, I would just see more and more violence to where now, if me and my wife are out in the evening, I feel like this increased level of, I need to make sure everything's safe. I need to be casing the joint, making sure,
Mm.
where my exit's at. Let me see, this guy looks kind of shady. These characters look weird. I got to keep an eye on certain people just because things just in the world started changing. And then,
So real quick, I kind of
yeah,
want to hold you there just for a second
yeah, yeah.
because I think that's very valid and it's worth exploring.
Hmm.
Like, so nothing really happened in your personal world that created that heightened sense of awareness. There was no moment where it's like, oh, the neighbor's house just got broken into, or oh, we the other night, we heard some shot. You know what I mean? Like it was nothing in your
Hmm.
vicinity. It was more of what you were observing um that was going on other places in the world.
There was one particular instance, but the thing that started kind of getting me more and more just on my toes in general, not necessarily that I need to have a firearm, but
Yeah.
just that I'm more focused about safety. Um, it was just kind of like the temperature just, in society was heating up.
Hmm.
Though, just quickly, I'll quickly tell the story of the thing that actually kind of like turned it on for me was me and my wife, since we were dating, we would go to San Francisco all the time, and we used to love it there, man. And people hear stories or I would hear stories on the news about San Francisco is just kind of going downhill. But that was our place. That was where we used to go all the time. Big Giants fan. You know what I'm saying? We love the water, so we go there all the time. And then one time we went and we took our daughter, and literally, without getting into detail, just every single thing that I heard, we experienced all of those things, right? So
Mm.
like just the feeling of not being safe, kind of like turning into a place that we would always go and park, and then it was like we felt the element there. It was a large group of just I would just say less desirables. It's just like, okay, so this
Yeah.
isn't what this place used to look like.
Yeah.
And I had my baby girl with me, and so it was a big difference. And in that trip, we were actually our car got broken into in a paid parking structure,
Uh,
and the security guard said they saw who did it, but it was like a homeless guy who was a nuisance, but there was nothing he could do about it. So I'm thinking, my mind went to like, so if I was just out here, like, for example, they stole a backpack. So if I would have went down there, like, oh, I got to grab my bag out of the car, and
yeah.
this guy is out here, and
Yeah.
he felt, however, he had some kind of weapon that he broke the window open, right? So
Right.
it's like I would have been in this situation, and this security guard. Not that I have a lot of faith in security guards, and that's kind of another thing that we'll get into with
Yeah.
to in general. Um, I would have just been attacked, and it would have just been like, okay, let's file a police report.
Uh,
There there was nothing to prevent this from happening,
yeah.
even though this guy has a jacket that says security on it, and I paid astronomical amount of money to have my car in a enclosed space instead of out on the street.
Right.
So
Right.
then that kind of sparked something in my head of like, man, I can't be out here exposed and vulnerable. Nobody's gonna help you, right? Like, or
That's,
or to the extent of something happens and it just sits there until you come and find out, like, oh man, I've been violated. Can somebody help? No, not really. But I'll tell you where you can go get a new window and get your window repaired. But yeah, there's nothing we can do about it. So that event kind of set a fire under me really, really considering like what to do, and my mindset 100% from young kid into young adulthood, just living carefree to like absolutely not. My safety is way too important. My family safety is way too important. What are my options?
All right, so I think this is great. I'm glad
Mm-hmm.
we paused right up in here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I too was in a situation in the Bay Area, but I was in Oakland.
Yay.
Okay,
And the yay.
in the Yay, love the Yay. I mean, I grew up.
Love
That's
it
the
too.
soil.
I
That's the
love the yay,
soil.
man.
But it is, but we got to be honest. And
Mm-hmm.
to make a long story short, they broke into my mom's car while I was there. I just didn't see it. Like it just happened so fast. Like I was basically, she had a rental car. I'm following her so she can drop the rental car off at the airport and then get back with me so we can drive back to Fairfield.
Mm-hmm.
We pull up to the gas station, so she can fill up before she turned the car in. I go and park kind of like on the side, just waiting for her, not really thinking anything. I got, you know, my kids, wife in the car. I'm pretty sure we doing something with them, make sure they good, whatever. And there's like a van or truck between me and my mom anyway. So anyway, as soon as she got out the car, she said she heard the other door slam, like her passenger side door.
Yeah.
They done went grabbed a purse off the seat and drove off. All right, now let's fast forward. You and
Mm-hmm.
I both Christians, right?
Amen.
You and I are both deep in our faith, and we are true believers. That fork in the road meant something different to you than it did to me for me, and I want to hear your perspective of how it resonated with me because I was hot.
I feel you.
I was hot. I ended up taking the car. I left them at the gas station. I drove caught up to them. It's
Yeah.
like four people in the car, and I'm looking at them, he looking at me, and it's nothing I can really do because it's for them. I don't know what they got in the car, windows tinted. I ain't gonna be stupid, but
Facts.
like to try to get a license plate number, calling 911, making sure I can give them the details of the car. Like I did everything I could, right?
Yeah.
I said to myself then, because how because that's my mom, because y'all did something to my mom. If I had a gun,
It would have been on. Yeah. I hear
and
you.
and and the crazy part is, no matter how much I might have felt it was right, if it went all the way left, I'd have been the one in the wrong because they stole a purse.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I might have put two people in the ground, right? Could happen.
Yeah.
If I do that, where am I now? How do I look for my kids, wife? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I really struggled with, man, do I go that route to try to meet, I'm gonna just say evil. Do I go that route of trying to meet evil with force? Or do I go the route of trying to meet evil with grace and and trying to walk away from the situation and knowing that I'm blessed and my mom is blessed to replace the purse, the phone. She
Yeah.
had a phone 2 days from then, got a new purse. You know what I'm saying? Like nothing stopped in her life. It
Yeah.
was a terrible moment. It was scary. She felt violated. We all felt hurt. We tried to console her. She was shaking, all those things, but it passed.
Mm-hmm.
So your thoughts on the difference of going that route or the other route I could have went was okay. I come up to Oakland a lot.
Yeah.
And so if y'all just gonna be popping doors open, Because when you pop the door open, you didn't have nothing with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So we're gonna play that game. Let's play that game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts?
My thoughts on how you handled that. I think in that particular situation, um, that is the best thing that you can do. Right? It's like getting caught slipping. You know, it's like not only were they able to maneuver or get whatever they did, where she didn't even recognize what was happening. Even having more people, you, your wife, around, and it happens like you said so fast, you didn't even have any idea what was going on until it was too late. And after that, there's really nothing that having a firearm in that particular situation can do besides possibly get you, you know, there's nothing you can do with a firearm in that situation that has anything to do with like your legal right to protect yourself or anything like that. So yeah, understanding that yourself of like, man, if I had a firearm, I probably would have done something um, that I can't take back. When you part of being a firearm or gun owner, you do think about that a lot, right? A big thing that a lot of people push is get insurance that will cover you in case you ever have to use your firearm, right? Because you can't just say, well, somebody did something to me, so I shot them. You can't really do that. No matter how much you know, some type of story like that might get sensationalized in the news every once in a while. You can't do that. Actually, they in the gun community they say the day you actually have to use your firearm to protect yourself will be like the best day and the worst day of your life,
Hmm.
right? It's like you'll be so glad that you are able to prevent whatever the worst from happening, but then at the same time you don't know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Because they investigate those things. Legal firearm
Yeah.
situations where you have to use that firearm, they investigate those things like, and rightfully so. But like you would have thought that you just ran up on some people and just did a drive by and sprayed the whole club because they because there's a way of you don't want to get it's not the Wild West, right? It's not the Wild West. So there are very specific instances where you can decide to do that, or you can make that decision based on circumstances and in different states and different counties. All that it's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, man, I think in that situation, me having a firearm wouldn't do just like the one I use, right? It made me it made me feel a type of vulnerable that made me realize that this whole trip has been strange,
Hmm.
right? Just like that safety is not just something on the TV anymore. I
Yeah.
was already seeing stuff and hearing about things that were making me kind of feel a certain way, but then it's like, man, within a 3 day weekend, I have felt extremely unsafe. I have been violated. It could have been worse, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then the reaction of law enforcement, and I'm not talking about security guards. Security guard is not even a real police officer,
Right.
but that reaction, money doesn't fix it, right? Paying to be inside of a covered parking structure
Yeah.
doesn't help. The security guard doesn't help, and the police can't do anything. They come after everything's done and kind of just ask you if you want to file a report. A report doesn't do anything. You
Yeah.
know, a report does absolutely nothing. So it started something in my mind. I didn't even think because I didn't have the ability to have the face to face. I
Hmm.
remember when I was a kid, maybe like 11 or 12, we had some neighbors that moved over and they were all like 17, 18, whatever. Um, and they were like cholos, right? And we for sure, like, I don't have 100% evidence, but somebody broke into our home, took our bomb radio. My mom had like a 64 or 128 analog mixer
Oh,
as
come
a
on
part of
now.
her like tower
Come on
recorder
now.
on top, dual tape deck. some crazy amount, maybe not 60. It might have been 60, 50 disc changer or something. She had the next level thing, man. They took the CD player, they didn't care about the tape deck or the record player, and took the equalizer, man. The amount of isolation you can get in that bad boy was insane. Like we would literally listen to the song with just one, one fader up, and then switch to the next one, and then just to hear
Just
every
here.
little part. Yeah, dude. And you get
Crazy.
some crazy stuff out of
That's
listening to.
crazy.
And so that was gone. And I saw one of these guys riding my bike.
Mm,
So without even thinking, again, my mom didn't even realize what happened. I grabbed my bat and I'm running across the street yelling at them. And my mom is like screaming for me to get back in the house. They went in the house and closed the door, but my mom's screaming for me to get back in the house. We don't know these people.
yeah.
And so I have that thing in me too. And at a young age, like my mom was like, you cannot do that. Do
Yeah.
not do that. You don't know what could have happened just now.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand exactly what you're saying, but in the heat of the moment, you could you could have made that decision, but also when you become a gun owner and you're in the 2A community and you're going through safety courses and trainings, you start to understand that, man, I don't ever want to pull this out. It's a very specific circumstance where that would be necessary. And I guess some people would have a gun and they feel tough. That wouldn't be one of the reasons why I would have my firearm on me at any time. It wouldn't be so I could feel like I could bump into somebody in the club and I don't care no more.
What?
We got a problem. We got a problem. Stepping on James like
Right.
with no regard, bro. No, that's not me,
Yeah.
and that's also not largely the active 2A community.
Mm,
So I understand that people have that in them.
yeah.
Just like some people with very nice cars, fast. I like fast cars. People with fast cars think that they need to drive that way on the street. People with fast cars think they need to drive that way in a parking lot. People with fast cars think they need to drive that way in heavy traffic. Um, but they
That's,
don't understand, why don't you just go to a track? You
yeah.
know, some
Yeah.
people buy very nice fast cars and they put them on a track and they push them, and when they're in normal traffic, they drive like normal people.
Right.
So that's a concern, and I think that's why we have some of the laws in place that are in place. And that might be getting too deep. That might be another section of the conversation.
Gotcha.
But I definitely understand you, and I feel that same way as far as in the passion of any incident, and trying to figure out, what's justice.
Yeah.
Um, you start to learn where to draw that line, and what your duty is, when you're talking about self defense and things of that nature.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, and we'll get right back where we were, but I think
Yeah.
a lot of times when it comes to guns, it- it's almost like racism, in the sense that if you're not around it and you don't see it, you don't understand what it feels like and why people fight against it so hard. Why people always talking about it. Why people always bringing it up. It's like, let it go. Come on, man. That was like back in the. Come on, like, are we? I live further closer to Palm Springs now, and I had a neighbor. We were out talking. I forgot what we were talking about, but there was some racial thing that was going on, like some police shooting that happened during that time. And he was like, yeah, all of this police, it's like, you don't really see any of that stuff, do you? I mean, that stuff is really over in most places. Like you got a few cops, but you probably, he was very dismissive of it. Like, yeah, that don't really happen anymore. And I was like, huh. So I had to tell him a story that, as mild mannered as I am, and as, you know, uh, joyous as I walk around, I had to tell him about a time that I was taken out of the car and made to sit on the curb and sit on my hands, and it was canines and for nothing.
Hmm.
I mean, and as I told him, it was interesting to hear him try to find why they might have done it. You know what I mean? Like just trying to find another reason. But I say all that to say, unless you're someone who's felt what that feels like, what it feels like to know that you're just an innocent guy driving for work with tools in the back of the car, and
Yeah.
now on the way to a client's home, you're sitting on the curb with your hands sitting on your hands, and them repeatedly asking you, "Are there weapons and drugs in the car?" You won't understand why people are so adamantly like coming up with organizations and putting together like social media campaigns and fighting so hard against racism. Like you won't understand it. And so I'm saying that to say some people I feel like live in a space or have lived in conditions where they haven't felt like, man, I wish I could have protected myself in that scenario.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And this is
Yeah.
just for the
Yeah.
side of the two-way community where it's about that. I know for some it's more, gamesmanship, and it's more of a leisure thing. It's more of a hobby. But
Yeah.
for a part of it, it is more protection. And until you, I'm saying all of this basically to say for anyone listening, sometimes instead of trying to judge why someone made a certain decision, try your best to find out what motivated that choice and how they feel like that decision would have made them better off in that moment. So I think if someone hears you saying, "Man, I'm with my wife, with my daughter, I'm their protector," it, I could have been in a situation where if I'm trying to fight this one guy because I don't have weapons, I don't have a gun that's gonna just get somebody to walk away. Now I'm in hand to hand combat with somebody, and now they're completely vulnerable.
Yeah.
So if he has some guys that hear and they run over to help or whatever, like it's just me.
Hmm.
Being able to protect my family means something to me. You see what I'm saying? Like I think people can understand. You know what I mean? If we take the time out to really like hear each other. That's all.
And I think that's a place. Not even. I mean, when we're speaking in a group and there's men, we can talk from that standpoint for sure. I think that's a thing that all men kind of understand, because if you haven't necessarily been in a situation where people are looking at you like, what you gonna do, like,
Yeah.
you clearly gotta handle something, like everybody's looking at you to handle it. And that could be weird stuff, from like walking down the street and some person crazy is just screaming and making a scene, and it's like, well, now you're the person who's got to stand closer to that person because you don't want to put your lady or your mom or your grandma or just a friend
Yeah.
in that danger. You're like, let me shield you from
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um and then and one of those things is, realistically, if the worst happened, you're just taking the hit, right? You're like, I'm here. I mean, little things like standing next to the street and the sidewalk. I'm here, so if anything gets, I'll get run over, and then you can be safe. Like, I don't have any kind of thing to stop a car from any. A gun
Just
won't
me.
stop. Just skin and bones. I'll take the hit, baby, and then hopefully that'll give you enough time
All
to
right.
get to safety. I've also had that discussion with my wife and daughter. Just, if anything ever happens, no matter what it is, a dog
Yeah.
is loose. If I say go,
Yeah.
just go.
Just go.
And whatever's about to happen, I'm gonna make sure that if the worst happens, that it stops with me.
It
Like,
happens
you
with me.
will be done, and I'll hold it as long as it, and then it's it. That's it. No
That's
matter
all I can
what.
do.
And so, based off of that, and kind of what we had mentioned earlier about like the bat and the machete, right? Um, the the Second Amendment, the first thing that I think is so important for people to understand, that it's rooted in a very primal instinct. that we all understand. You don't have to understand guns. You don't have to understand a machete. You don't have to understand a bat. You don't have to understand, Pops and Friday telling you to put your dukes up, right? Everyone understands that when something is happening to you that you don't want to happen to you, that is causing hurt, harm, or danger to your person, that it is a instinct, it is a primal instinct, and you have every right to protect yourself. And that's where the base root of this whole discussion starts, right?
Yeah.
So in America, and we can talk about other nations as we kind of get deeper into it, because it'll make sense for America. Um, People understand the bat. People understand, like in signs, running out of the house, yelling at the top of your lungs with a bat to
Yeah.
scare whoever it is. We get that. And then what if they're not scared?
Huh.
Right? I think, I don't know about ladies, but I think every guy kind of has played this thing in their mind where you're about to fight. What if I give this dude 100% and he shakes it right off? like, like I'm coming with the follow up,
All right.
but man, if the one doesn't shake, like
Yeah.
plan
Yeah.
B is gonna have to be fire. You know what I'm saying? Like,
All right.
cause that's a bad sign. And so like, we understand the bat, and in our mind, what we think is gonna happen is I'm gonna come up to this person with a bat. They're not gonna have a bat, and they're gonna
Huh.
say, "Oh, I don't want them to hit me with a bat, so I'm sorry." And that can happen a lot. That
Yeah.
can happen a lot. In my job, I used to have to walk around neighborhoods a lot, and I had a stick that was used for doing something complete. It was part of like a tool that I needed. And
Huh.
I would just walk it with it outside of my hand. And anytime I was in a weird situation, I just make sure whatever suspicious person was around that they saw that I have this. Right now, I don't know what they have, right? But just hey, I ain't no easy mark, man. Like
You gotta at
it's
least
going
go through this.
like baby girl said, you gonna walk over, you gonna let back. Like something's going to happen. I'm going to return fire,
All right.
and at least that. So do you want to risk that to do whatever whatever mischievous goal you may have?
Right.
So in that sense, I was limited. That was one of the things that I used. Now we start talking about knives, right?
Huh.
In lots of places in the world where you don't necessarily have gun freedom, knife violence is very high.
That's true.
And when somebody pulls a knife on you, man, we don't have to get deep into the stats and everything, but it's not looking good for you, man. It's not looking good. Cause like when they talk about crimes of passion, a knife is one of those, weapons of passion, to where you generally don't get like sliced and like told you, and then they just back off. Once you do it, it's something like I don't know if you get the satisfaction of doing it, or you don't get the satisfaction, so you keep going until you feel the. I don't know what it is, but it's
Huh.
one of those two to
Yeah.
where knife violence is out of control. But I'm like, well, if the bat, depending on what I think the threat is, I might grab this bat or I might grab this machete.
Yeah.
If I grab the blade, and I have all kind of different blades. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, so if I grab this, I'm in a very a much more intimate, close type of situation. But I have a scarier weapon to be like, a bat will hurt for sure, and I could hit you really hard with this bat. This knife definitely raises the level of lethality,
Yeah.
right? So
Absolutely.
so hopefully, again, just like with the bat, but now it's like, listen, this could go a lot further than a bat. So whatever you're trying to do, is it worth the possible end? And a bat could do tons of damage. Again, one of the things that come up a lot in gun debates is that most so many people die, more people die by just getting beat on
Hmm.
than necessary. And that's something we can talk about later. But so a bat can do lethal damage. A knife can do lethal damage. Is it worth it to you?
Right.
Um, and let's just for that for the sake of argument, let's just say every other weapon that we can imagine, right? A katana, a kendo stick, or whatever they're called, like nunchucks, any weapon that you can imagine,
Yeah.
they all kind of fall under that umbrella. And but none of them are classified like you would classify a firearm, which is called the great equalizer, right? And it's a great equalizer because a woman can have a stick and hit you with
Yeah.
it, or a bat, and it might not hurt like a grown man hitting. A kid can hit you with something, and it might not hurt at all.
Right.
Um, Different levels of, a large person who's not as mobile might have one of those weapons that we're talking about and not be able to maneuver quickly enough or with enough force to inflict the right amount of damage to stop whatever the threat is, right? So a firearm introduces another level where now we're the same, or I have just elevated, no matter what my shortcoming is, I have now elevated to where I don't need to be fast. I don't need to be strong. I don't need to be tall. Um, this is a place where you need to really, really decide um, if whatever's happening is worth ending it all right here, right now. And so I think because it's at the high, let's just say the highest level, um, it makes people think, okay, like, well, what do we do about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also the specific reason that it was named in the Constitution,
Hmm.
and it's specific because there's an understanding of how important this is, right? Um, and so there were, it wasn't an accident that it was mentioned, and especially that it was mentioned very early. It wasn't a second. It wasn't like it wasn't far down the line. Like you know what, we should probably be able to protect ourselves too. Like it was like, yo, we got to be able to. You can say whatever you want to say,
Yeah.
and you should be able to protect yourself. Like those
That's
two
big.
huge deals, man. And
And I'm gonna bring it up just
oh yeah, 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 yeah,
so we can see. So
yeah,
if
man.
it just in case no one
My
knows,
church says I am the militia,
I
and we'll
am the
get
militia.
into that because that worked those people off. So we'll talk about that too.
It very, very well does. It definitely threw me off the first time I read it. I was like, hold on, what are we talking about?
Mm-hmm.
This isn't. And then anyway, so just for anybody that's listening, that's not watching, I put the Second Amendment up on screen for anyone that doesn't know it verbatim. A lot of people just hear things and they just go with it. A lot of people don't research. A lot of people don't just read for themselves. You jump in my car, I got the Constitution in the glove compartment because if
Oh,
anybody wants to bring up something that I don't know, at least I can go look at it.
yeah.
I can go look at the Bill of Rights in my car right now. Like, you should do that. There's nothing to get a pocket Constitution. Less than $10 on Amazon. Like, do yourself a favor.
Mm-hmm.
So the Second Amendment says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What does this mean to you, man? What does this mean to you?
Um, what it means to me is that like you might hear people say things like freedom isn't free, right?
Hmm.
um it's that this your person is important, and there's actually your person is important,
Yeah.
right? And in this particular instance, you're talking about a nation, right? So
Right.
they're talking about protecting that nation,
Hmm.
protecting its citizens, protecting um, um, not just the Constitution, but the way this general populace is constituted. Like you have to be able to protect this thing, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of live today where the idea of just another force coming in and just taking over, we can't even fathom that. Like we're so separated from that. That's what we watch on TV happening in other countries on the news, right? Um, at the time of this writing, that was something where pretty much the whole world understood that that could happen, right?
Yeah.
So, words, um, it would be like, say, like for example, free state. It wouldn't necessarily mean like we're in California, um, but meaning at the time, just this our land, our group, right, our people. Um, I guess that would be what that was is about specifically, or more specifically. Um, and then the word militia. Um, at that time, again, what we're talking about, um, several hundred years ago. So the idea of a militia, like we have, what is that called? We have conscription here, but we don't think about it because when was the last time that we had to draft people right into the military? But when we talk about conflicts, we talk about military age men, right?
Yeah.
It would be essentially the people that would be charged with protecting the nation. So that would be able-bodied men, whatever adulthood would be at that time. And so the idea of who is the militia, it would at that time be men of a certain age and age group, and then well regulated. Uh, in our
Real quick.
mindset today, or how
Real
we
quick.
live
There's.
kind of today. Say it again.
Can you see that on the screen?
I can see it, but I can't read it.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
it's a breakdown of it reads out the Second Amendment,
Oh, okay.
the
Yeah, yeah,
Constitution,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then it has a breakdown of what does militia mean in the Second Amendment. It
Mm-hmm.
has three bullet points. The first bullet point says, excuse me, at the time of the American Revolutionary War, militias were groups of able bodied men who protected their towns and colonies. The second one says states were responsible for organizing militias. And the third one says Hamilton recognized the importance of both professionalized citizens, sorry, professionalized citizen soldiers, and ensuring that the people at large are properly armed and equipped.
Okay.
So that's deep because
I think that's solid. I think it's good with the three bullet points too because it covers ground.
yeah,
Um, it's just it's a term that we don't use a lot. I
yeah,
think when we hear militia, we think military immediately, and we
immediately,
only think that.
yeah,
Um, and the funny thing is, um, it for example, Muhammad Ali, right? It's
hmm,
like, hey man, it's go time. I'm a boxer. No, no, no. You're a military age man. You're the militia. It's time to go.
yeah,
Now his decision and politically and all that kind of stuff, whole different story. But it's like he's a boxer,
yeah,
or I'm in school. I'm a student, right?
right,
Or
right,
I'm no, you are the militia. I mean,
hmm,
we're a first world country. We have television. We have plenty of distractions. We have so many goals. We have politicians to deal with all that other stuff.
yeah,
No, no, it's sorry that you know the life is so disconnected from the reality of these things, but
yeah.
you actually are required, like you are the militia.
And so,
And,
real quick,
and
how
yeah,
does that? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna go to regulated. So
I was just gonna say, so then let's try to break it down so that the people listening don't feel like we glossed over it. But
Mhm.
so how do we translate what militias were then? Were there these state organized, well armed groups of people that are there to protect, the communities,
Mhm.
and like because this is what's going to happen. We titled this "Gun Freedom versus Gun Control."
Mhm.
The issue that happens is the comparison is always to the extreme, right?
Okay.
So the comparison is not Mike who wanted to go get a revolver or whatever amount of handguns for his home, for his personal vehicle, on his person, to protect his family in a crazy situation. The comparison goes to the fully automatic assault rifle
Mhm.
that is gunning down all the people at this event.
Mhm.
And then when the pushback is, hey, Second Amendment, then it's like, well, hold on. How are we using the way that is well worded, well constructed, beautifully articulated? How are we using that to gloss over or even um, create some level of cushion around this tragedy that happened? Because it's never like, okay, yeah, Second Amendment, but you're right, we got to do something about that. It's more like, hey, Second Amendment,
Mhm.
back off the
Okay.
guns.
I got you.
You see what I mean?
Because what I gotta pull I'm just gonna pretend that you are that statement that you just made, right?
Okay.
Like that is your opinion. So it would be, well, the Second Amendment does not grant you the right or the authority to commit crimes, right? That's why we were talking about protecting ourselves. Somebody snatches your mom's purse, you can't chase them down and just light up their car. Like that's not, the Second Amendment doesn't say that that's okay, and there's no laws that say that you can just do that.
Yeah.
So whenever we're talking about somebody breaking the law, and I think people get offended, rightfully so, but as a law-abiding citizen and uh, a legal gun owner, I don't want to be compared to that person. Somebody that decides to use a tool or weapon to do something wrong, like your knife or your bed by your bedside. That's the tool that I've decided to protect myself and my family with. There are people getting hit upside the head with baseball bats every day. There's people getting stabbed with knives every day, and those aren't necessarily protected forms of protection. I think they are. I think that the Second Amendment specifically says arms, but I think by going to that level of protection, that it means virtually any weapon for the protection of self and the community, and the nation. So I would say um, that whenever we're talking about somebody committing a crime, we need to like stay in the box of someone doing something illegal, right? So me having one handgun, one very large caliber handgun, a revolver, a semi-automatic, a shotgun, right? Different size shell shotguns, double barrel shotgun, right?
Yeah.
Or a wooden stock rifle versus composite or different type of material, a black rifle versus a wooden rifle. It these things, and then also the idea of like automatic. um I don't think that there should be really a rule against an automatic weapon.
Hmm.
As a shooter, I'm just like, I mean, it might be fun to shoot at something outside with an automatic weapon, but the problem with an automatic weapon in my eyes would be you can't be as precise, right? There's safety issues with that. Where would I be where I would need that. If it was legal, I would probably have one.
Huh.
And it wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't be like, I need this for my protection. That wouldn't be my primary concern. It would be more, I'm just interested in having one. And I think that that would be perfectly fine. I don't think that's anything for anyone to be afraid of necessarily. Um, um, I think staying focused on with somebody having either a modified weapon or a weapon that would be actually automatic. I think that's less of the concern because that very, I mean, the number is like a percentage of percentage that would actually happen. I think it would be more just any weapon in general. I come with this weapon and now I'm gonna try to inflict, you know, a major amount of damage to people. What do we do about that?
Right.
You know? And that's where the discussion, that's where it starts, but that's not we don't always follow that in a straight line to a solution. We kind of
Yeah.
jump all over the place.
Yeah.
And then the pro gun people, yeah, just I understand. Just saying Second Amendment, it sounds like maybe you don't care as much, or maybe you're not paying attention to the specific thing, but also yelling, this person committed a crime with this weapon, so that weapon is not good. And if you don't agree that we should just remove that weapon from life, then you don't care about dead kids is also way far off the reservation. Like you are wilding right now, and so but that's where we're at,
Let me get that together.
huh? Oh, I didn't see that. I didn't see.
Yeah. um.
Was that like types of weapon stats or something?
Yeah, I was gonna pull it up because I think what you said was a really good point that um the weapons um that there's other weapons that people use, and they're,
Oh yeah,
the reason for them is all the same thing. They're trying to, in so many words, go home that night. You know what I mean? They're trying to make it back to their
yeah.
families, or they're trying to get somebody out of their home,
Mm-hmm.
away from their families. And so I was trying to pull up a graphic that showed the weapons used in homicides in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see that
Yeah.
a little bit?
Weapons. I don't know. Maybe somebody jimmy together some kind of some kind of
So
thing.
this is on
You miss with your
ammo.com.
stick. I'm not gonna miss with these two bullets.
So
uh,
interestingly enough, it has handguns and firearms separate. Um, and then it has other guns
oh, I
also
see. Hang.
separate.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then it has rifles separate. So um, I'm interested to understand why. I mean, I guess we don't really need to get into it because it's not like you made this graphic, but why firearms and handguns
Uh,
are
well,
separate and rifles. So anyway, uh,
well, I see. I see what it is. The firearm one
any
means
insight
it's
on that?
not. You don't know what firearm it is. You can't classify if it was a
Oh, I see
handgun
what
versus a gun versus a rifle.
you
You
got
know.
it, got it, got it. Okay,
But personal
okay. So,
weapons, I really don't know what personal weapons is. My dad used to tell me about something called a zip gun, where they would take a bunch of rubber bands on a plank of wood
hmm,
and they would flick them
uh-huh.
on a real bullet, and the bullet would fire. I don't know. He's
Wow,
never shown it to me. He just said that was like back in the day in the 70s, like
oh,
when you
that's
want to
different.
sneak a gun in somewhere, you just had like a 22 with a bunch
That's
of listen, bro. I wish I could explain more of that. I didn't think that would even come up in this
that
discussion.
is different.
But hey, you know, pops. You know,
I know,
pops.
I know.
Yeah.
Shout out
So
to
he now this is just weapons used for what now? I don't see the top of it.
So for homicides,
Oh, okay.
weapons, murder. Can you see that? Murders by
Yep.
weapon type.
Mm-hmm.
2024 statistic, and I specifically put in murder. Well, I put in homicides. It shows murders, but I did
Yeah,
that because most of the um, deaths caused by firearms are suicides.
this is true. I think it's 60%, but I mean,
It's around that because I think I saw
it's,
around like 55 or something like that. So in
mhm.
that ballpark of just a little over half. Um, and so I wanted to see what it looked like specifically for homicides and and also to shine some light on maybe why people don't spend as much time talking or fighting about you know knife homicides and these other ways. It's like you're trying to get to the big boss. You know what I'm saying? I
Mhm.
don't got time for
Yeah,
the little dude. You know what I mean?
well, see, this is what's interesting is because we have the Second Amendment, because the guns are the big boss in America. That's where our conversation goes. We go all the way to the top,
Right.
and then of course, if somebody, even though school shootings do not make up the bulk of the shootings that happen, those are the
Right.
ones that are that hit our hearts the most,
Of course.
because we kind of know that the other stuff, there's there's all kind of different things that are happening on between people,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
with the schools it's like innocent children, so it kind of
Right.
freaks us out, and so we kind of jump to that. But understanding that, like, in other countries, Idris Elba, I love this dude, like, he's one of my favorite actors,
Mhm.
but he doesn't live in a place where they have the Second Amendment, right? Firearms are not very prevalent. I don't know if I don't know what you would have to go through to get a firearm out there, but it's very difficult, if
Mm,
not impossible.
mm,
So he was literally on a panel where they were discussing knife violence, because
mm.
that's how they get down,
Yeah.
and they literally were saying that they need to make knives illegal.
Hmm.
I don't know. You could. I mean, you. I don't know if you want to try to find it and play it. It might be too much, but if you just look it up, that is a real thing. And I listened to him say that, and I was like, Idris,
And
come on.
and that's in the UK.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. They're trying to make knives illegal. Just there's also a section of people that collect knives. I don't know if you've ever seen those, like, very well. I mean, a knife is a knife, right? But then for me, I
No,
know.
no, no. That's not a knife.
Hey,
This
stop.
is a knife.
um, but there's like very crazy, like, art, insane looking blades that people spend a lot of time crafting, right? And people collect them. And sort of like the gun argument, you have
Yeah.
people that collect these certain special knives that are like, yo, just because my knife looks scary does not mean that it is a crime knife or an
Mm,
assault knife. It doesn't mean that. And they're having the literal same discussion about knives
mhm,
that we're having about guns. And
hmm.
the people that don't want the knives have the same misconceptions and exaggerations about knives that we have about guns. A huge thing. Sheila Jackson Lee. I think she passed away, so rest in peace.
Hmm.
Um, Sheila Jackson Lee. She was a. I don't want to say it wrong, but I believe she's a congresswoman,
Okay.
and she was. They were trying to bring back the assault weapon ban, right?
Mm,
And we don't have to get all in that for this discussion,
yeah.
but something that she said was that the AR-15 is heavy,
Hmm. Well,
and
go ahead.
say it
Go ahead.
again. She said these big, weapons of war is a thing that said a lot. These big weapons of war that are as heavy as like 10 boxes. And it's like, well, I don't understand what you mean. And then also within that line was like, you know, shooting, 50 caliber bullets, you can shoot, I forget what it was, like 50 in a second or something like that. Well, based on what you can purchase legally in America, virtually every single one of those things were wrong.
Hmm.
Like, but and it was like, well, why does she think that? You know what I'm saying? And it's like you're about to craft legislation that could literally make the first, for example, the first gun I ever had was an AR-15,
Uh-huh.
and maybe I should have explained that a little bit more. When I went to purchase my first firearm, people had been doing a run on on gun stores and ammo, and so when I went in there, there's not a lot of gun stores in California necessarily in the Valley.
Uh,
So when I went to the one that I'd seen ever since I was a kid, I went in there and virtually there were maybe about five guns in the whole store. All the racks on the side and then
jeez.
the counter, they were virtually basically empty. And I didn't know. I knew a 1911. That's the only name of a gun I knew. Went through this whole conversation with the guy. It was very difficult because it's like, well, what do you want? And I just assumed I wanted a handgun. We started a conversation. He kind of explained to me, everybody wants a handgun, but a handgun is probably the most dangerous because the point of contact is just here. You know, the handgun is the one that when you go to a gun range, if you look up at the ceiling and you see all those holes in the ceiling, that's from people shooting a semi-automatic handgun, and you don't realize the recoil, and when you you pop it again, and
That
so
does happen. Pop,
right,
pop. Yeah.
so so he's saying if you when you have a shotgun, you have 2 points of contact, right?
Uh,
Even on a semi-automatic shotgun, you still need to hold you're still holding a grip, some grip. And with a rifle, you have 3 points of contact. You'll have your hand, you'll have your support here, and then you'll actually have there's a cheek weld here, and you lay your hand in here, so you actually have a good grip, and you're very focused on what you're shooting, which falls in line with the rules of the rules of firearm safety, right?
yeah.
Of knowing where you're pointing the muzzle, right? Making sure that you are focused on that target, whatever that target is, right? Those are those are some of the rules, but um, so then he explained to me some of those things. He says, you know what? If you don't know anything about firearms, it actually would be a good idea to get a kit and build it. That way you become more intimately, connected to the firearm. You understand some of the working pieces and stuff like that. So
That
he's
makes
like, I'll help you, or you can put it together. He said, I'll help you, right? Just buy me some beer, right? So we were supposed to set this up, and then I'm sitting here for like maybe about 2 weeks, and I'm
uh,
just looking at all these pieces. I bought the kit. I'm looking at everything, and I'm like, this is just a puzzle. I can put this together.
hmm.
I just got a couple of YouTube videos, got all my tools together, built it myself, and then took it to my buddy and had him shoot it and say, make sure I did everything right, shoot it, make sure it functioned properly, and that was my introduction into firearms, man. So
Wow.
it was like, okay, now I not only do I know how to use a firearm, but I know firearms now.
Yeah.
So then after that, it was just like you couldn't stop me. I was heavily into heavily into the community and learning a lot. But what most people will do is you go to a gun store. It'll be a woman because she got a first apartment or a house, or maybe you got divorced and now you're by yourself, right? So you're responsible for your safety. And it's like I just need something to put under the bed, right?
Mm,
And you get this, usually a revolver or a small handgun, and you sit it down and you never touch it,
yeah.
right? And that's where certain issues come up. To if you don't know it, you don't know what this firearm is. You get scared and you're out here, quick draw McGraw, right? There's a lot to know, and there's more respect that needs to be given to this privilege or this right that
Yeah.
we acknowledge in this country. And I think when you see in the 2A community, there you're always hearing a focus on training. You're always hearing a focus on um, not necessarily building your gun, but like cleaning it, understanding how it functions, and whether or not you do that is up to you. But there's definitely a very strong push toward firearm safety and understanding your firearm in the community. So,
Which is
um,
dope.
Yeah.
which is dope. And I pulled this up just so they can see, we
Hmm.
get an exact feel of what the
Hmm.
AR-15 looks like.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if any of these look like what your first
Uh,
Joan
probably, probably the first one. You ain't got to go too crazy with it.
right
Yeah, the
here.
first one. That's pretty much it. Yeah. Yeah. And I think something to
I get smaller.
oh, there we go. Yeah, I mean, yeah, minus the overwhelming like America first vibe. um,
uh,
if you can, if you want to look up Ruger American, if you can,
hmm. uh
Ruger American, and maybe 308, that 308 one right there. Let's see that one. Yeah, just hit the first one. So the reason why I'm doing that is because based off of that, I think when you show the AR-15, most people can think of like a movie that they've seen somebody holding something that looked like that in.
Yeah.
If you look at this 308 version thing here, this rifle,
Hmm.
um, the
It still has a window. Hold on.
oh, is it loading?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm okay.
Yeah. Okay. I see the issue. Hold on.
Hmm.
Let me get you right. Let me get you right.
Yeah, boy.
Let me get you right. Uh, there we go. There we go.
There we go.
All right. You see
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. So this type of rifle, in most people when they're talking about like um, uh, gun control laws and stuff like that, they are not
Mhm.
including this rifle, right? And it was this. There's a guy, man, dude. We should do a whole series on this. We should have this discussion like once a month, because there's this guy. His name is Maj Toure, and he started this group called Black Guns Matter,
Hmm.
right? And he's out in Philly. You know what I'm saying? Just in case. Wait, hold on. It's been a minute since you.
Oh man.
There we go. Out in Philly, right? And he started in the inner city, um, just teaching people about gun rights, encouraging people to get their licenses, encouraging people to purchase their first firearm and go out and do. He gives free training. It's an awesome thing,
That's
but
dope.
he's really passionate about it, and he goes into the history of gun laws. I kind of told you when we were talking on the phone a couple of days ago about like his ideas. Like first off, knowing the history, gun confiscation, uh, gun laws in general are
Hmm.
rooted in racism. He don't want to have no part of it, right?
Oh wow.
And then living in Philadelphia, which we know is, I think, one of the four most dangerous cities for gun violence or something like that. It might not be the top four, but it's one of the top ones.
That's why we all the other 31 teams got together to let y'all win because
Yeah,
we didn't.
because you
We
didn't want
want
that
y'all.
trouble.
We want to make sure y'all city good. I mean, y'all still
Yeah.
ended up trashing the city
Oh,
even with
yeah.
winning.
That's gonna
We
happen.
tried. We tried to help y'all out.
Couple
Whatever.
screws loose. Couple screws loose. So yeah, just let us just keep on. Let us get about 3, 4 more of them. You know what I'm saying? And then I think we can calm down for a minute.
I got
But for example, so Black Guns Matter.
you. Yeah.
He's in the inner city because one of the things that we don't realize is we might talk about a school shooting in a certain area, usually not in the Black community, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a topic for a different day,
Yeah.
but and then we start talking about hunters, we start thinking about like rednecks,
Mm.
right? And we're not thinking about the elderly community that are being terrorized in the inner city neighborhoods that want to get firearms and they can't, right?
I mean, are the
Because
elderly really gonna walk up with the Ruger 308 though?
hey, no, oh no,
With
different
a
different
bullet
conversation
hole.
about this. No, the OGs think all I need is my 38. My, they're like, I just need my 38.
That's it.
Um,
That's it.
and then but they're not able to,
Yeah.
because as the gun laws we're trying to figure out a way to stop certain violence,
Yeah.
we don't realize it affects, once you make that law, it's on everybody. It's not like, oh well, this old man who's, people are taking advantage of in the community, how is he supposed to protect himself?
Yeah.
And because it's so dangerous, the police don't come,
Yeah.
right? um and yeah, it's a lot of inner gang type stuff, but it's also a lot of people just getting hit over the head, man, and getting stuff snatched from them. So it's not a redneck issue. It's not a middle America issue. It's very much the Second Amendment is very much a black issue, right?
Riddle me this, because this is
Okay.
usually where I run into my straddling the fence,
Mm-hmm.
if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that you stated, the beauty of the guns, the art of the pieces, the protection, the gamesmanship, even talking about how the biggest thing is like, hey, this is one of the first things they thought of when they decided let's write this thing out. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Now they were obviously of a different mindset, in that day. Which that's a whole other conversation because just the whole when they got here and who was already here and then how they did them, but then now they go okay, so whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This America was started violently. Let's just agree on that. Um, with all of that understood, even if all that is accepted, the question then is not how few of these accidents are specifically these kind of guns, or how few of these tragedies there really are in the comparison of this and that and the other. Like, yeah, that school, yeah, that church, yeah, that movie theater, yeah, that event, yeah, that stadium, yeah, but that's only a small amount. So without saying the but,
Mm-hmm.
where's the solution then? Because I struggle with, as cool and as fun and as most of the time no problem that a weapon of war is, it's still like, yeah, but why have it? It's almost like looking in the hood and seeing like certain drugs in the hood or certain weapons, as we know, they get dropped off in the hood. Or it's like, okay, well, if you let something in that has a possibility of something negative, we know the world we live in, back to our faith, we know it exists in this realm. And
Mm-hmm.
so if we know that evil can get to it, if we know that evil is always lurking around the corner,
Mm-hmm.
then I haven't really heard a reason that's so strong that says leave the candy out for evil, because the candy's good in this other realm, and
Mm-hmm.
day to day it's no problem. And most of us that have this candy, we know how to use it and we respect it and we treat it a certain way, and we hope that we never have to, cool. But the fact that the candy is there, evil can get to it. So why not? What's the reason for why not remove? And I'm just talking about whatever they would classify as weapons of war, whatever they would classify as what the military would actually use this
Mm-hmm.
over in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
Why,
But
why
why
do
do you
our
allow?
streets need it?
Okay, but what you can't allow them to tell you, like you're saying, well, whatever they say, and then I mentioned Sheila Jackson Lee earlier, and I showed you the two, or I brought up the Ruger American 308
Yeah.
to compare and contrast. The Ruger 308, I should have had it. I don't even know if Facebook would be cool with me showing you different things, but the let's just say, for example, the AR-15 bullet is like this, right?
Okay.
Like my pinky.
Okay.
The 308 is like this type of round.
Hmm.
And
Let's see if
those
I can
two
pull it
those
up.
two rifles, they shoot, actually the 308 shoots faster, right? Mine, the particular gun I showed you, is it's not semi-automatic, but there are semi-automatic 308s. And so as far as like the ability to shoot, and then get a secondary shot on the same target over and over again, they virtually have the same thing. It's literally when people see that wood stock, because that's not in every movie. That's like, the tough guy shooting down a bunch of Rambo, right?
Yeah.
He's not using a 308 Ruger
Yeah.
American wooden stock. He's using something that's, oh, you got it. Okay,
Yeah.
so you can see the disparity in this, you know, um, and you have people. Side note, but I think it's worth saying. It's like people will say this, this weapon, and just where it says 223, just so we understand, 223, and then another caliber called 556 are virtually the same, and those are shot out of uh, pretty much every AR-15 style that you would see,
Mm.
is usually that type of ammunition. There's lots of different ammunition types, but those are the most common. And they're like, oh well, this bullet will tear your arm off. It's just like, just kind of saying things
Yeah.
that are just thought up. I don't know where they get it from. As a gun shooter, I watch videos where they show different calibers, how their penetration, and based on the velocity that they come with, or whether the rifle barrel, it's whether the barrel is tuned in a certain way to get more speed and more
Yeah.
velocity out of the, and I'm watching this stuff, and then I'm watching them shoot through these jail mannequins that are supposed to resemble, whether it's an animal or flesh, to show you what it actually does when it penetrates. And then I hear somebody say, like, you shoot this at a person, it's gonna blow their arm off. It's like, that's absolutely not true. Like, it's not even like, where did you come up with that? And it's because there's other things behind that. There's other goals and motives behind that. And when I scare the crap out of you like that, you're like, well, why would I need that? Why would I need that? Well, the answer is, you probably don't. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And it really is that simple. But when we're talking about leaving candy out for the devil, I don't see it like that. Because keep in mind, what in the beginning I said, this is a right for every American citizen to to protect themselves, their community, and the nation.
Uh-huh.
There are legal parameters. You can't. It doesn't clear you to go commit homicide or commit murder and terrorize your community. That's the opposite of what the Second Amendment is for. So
Yeah.
when somebody does that thing, saying, let's just remove the weapon, it doesn't remove the weapon from the person who intends to do harm. I'm a law-abiding citizen, right? I would no longer be able to be a law-abiding citizen and purchase a firearm. You've taken that away from me. You didn't do anything to stop X, Y, and Z person from, obtaining whatever tool they wish to use to inflict damage and strike fear into people in the community to get whatever they want. I don't think there's a way to ensure that,
I mean, that
And go ahead.
it makes sense, and I think that's why this conversation. I think that's why it's so hard to find what the resolution is, and
Mhm.
when I'm gonna kind of try to dial it down into like a much smaller
Yeah.
version. Am I frozen?
Uh, yes, but I heard when you said it, you weren't, and then
Right.
then and then it froze.
Yeah, I'm on that. The world is mine, and that. All right, there we go.
You back?
So yeah, I'm gonna shrink it down to a different example, but then I would love for you to for you to answer from your perspective in the 2A community. Then what is the answer, or is there an answer? Okay,
Hmm.
and so the the sample that I want to say look at is like, um, your daughter is in high school now.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that just
yeah,
clicked. You saw it? It just clicked.
yeah. It's real,
Man,
man. Boy, about to be 15 a couple months.
fire, fire.
That's insane.
Congratulations, dude. You did it.
Insane. Yeah, boy.
You
And
get
you doing it like 3, 4 times, right?
it. Right, right. All right, so she's in high school.
Uh-huh.
You find out that the school allows um any weapon as long as um it fits in a specific, like let's say a fanny pack. Can't be any bigger than a weapon that would fit in a fanny pack.
Mhm.
You can have bullets, but um you can only, even if it has a clip, you can only put in a max of 5 bullets. You know, 5 rounds is all they allow in your firearm, and this is the school rule, right? It's been the school
Mhm.
rule for years. The school, Dudley Douglas, he came up with this, and they honor it. And the school has been tried and true for a long time, been here since the Revolutionary War.
Mhm.
And but as times change, right? And and I bring this up because the Constitution also had specific things about Black people, right? And then time changed. The community, the culture changed. It shifted,
Mhm.
and so they went back and said, you know what? That made a lot of sense then. It don't quite fit now. We got to make some adjustments, right? So time has changed, and at your daughter's school, at least 3 to 5 times over the past 10 years, there's been someone shot, someone killed in class, teacher, janitor, student, parent at the school. I would assume that somewhere inside of you, you'd be thinking, you know, if they just had no school, no guns at all, then this couldn't happen. At least you'd be thinking that. Obviously, that's not
No,
100% true because people can bring guns, right? People
of
can
course,
sneak stuff on.
of course.
However, we can agree to, even if we looked at gun violence in other countries where they're not as freely obtained, and here we can see the difference in numbers, right? We have laws that give us the right to, but then we also have a crazy amount of homicides and accidental killings and freeway shootings. Like we got stuff that other places don't have to the level that we have. Agreed?
Regarding firearms, yes.
Yeah. So I'm saying yes, we know that something could be brought on campus because that happens now. But you could almost, just looking at the way that the world is, you could almost anticipate that though it could happen, it's gonna happen at a lower clip, no pun intended, if these few bad actors are possibly sneaking a gun in. Because now just it's random. Now you may have a kid that year that decides to, or may not. But it's another thing when everyone has them and they're just floating around freely all the time.
Mhm.
So, and maybe you don't feel like that. But for me, and I'm sure that people that are still trying to understand the space of both sides, that's kind of how you see it. Like, yo, just get rid of, okay, let's stop the guns. Like clearly that used to work, but now you guys got a problem. Now we're constantly getting, coming up, going to services at the school because someone was shot and killed, or shot and injured. Like these are children. Get the firearms out of here. Now, with that purview,
Mhm.
you don't agree with that, but so what would be your
Okay.
solution to that?
Yeah.
How would you resolve that with your daughter in that school?
Okay. So first thing you said, I'm gonna make it simple, and then you gave me a lot. You
I
gave
know
me a lot.
I'm bad at that.
That was not the simplest situation, but what
I
I'll
thought it
say
was
is
more
when
simple
you
than America. Maybe I should have.
okay, no, okay, now I got you.
Maybe I should have said it that way.
No, then you did a great job. Okay, so the first thing when you showed that diagram,
Uh-huh.
knife was like 28, 30%, something like that, right?
No, knife was not 9.1%.
9%. Okay,
Yes,
so even better, it was very small, right?
right.
But if you go to other countries
Hmm.
where they don't have a Second Amendment, knife would be really big, gun would be very small,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
So the reason why people are using tools to murder people has less to do with the tool than it does with the mental state of what whether it's our politics, right? We just had a political election cycle where we had at least one for sure assassination attempt and possibly two, right? Something weird on a golf course happened. Um, we've had at least the last three presidents that I can think of, or I guess Biden could be in there, but definitely Bush, definitely Obama, and definitely Trump, where people just in protesting would hang them in effigy or what have you. Like the idea of killing the person that you don't like is something that people just do. Snoop Dogg famously had the thing where he shot somebody dressed like Trump, like a clown Trump or whatever. But I mean, usually when you see that effigy thing, it's just hanging them or burning them alive, right?
Huh.
So people will kill somebody in any kind of different way, right? Until there's a place where it's like these people just love each other and we don't have that, and there's communities where there's far less violence, and the 2A community would say those communities also have far less diversity of thought and of background, right? They're very much the same people. They may even have pretty much the same religious style or beliefs or lack of, right? Those communities, and we can do research on that and really dig into that. But as from my just in the things that I hear, for America to be this diverse in so many different ways, and for the temperature to be so high, um, when you compare to other places, it's yeah, there's going to be violence, and people are going to use different means to achieve that violence. And in America, because we have this right enshrined in the Constitution, I don't compare it to racial things, and I'll get to that in a minute. That would be a a thing that more because it's an option, it will show up more as the option used,
Huh.
right? If you take it away, they'll just go to the other option. Just like I said, however many people get beaten to death or one punch knockout and they hit their head on and die, you know, whatever. Um, Particularly with the schools, what you suggest has already been done, right? You say, if we had these guns and then we said no more guns, to my knowledge, I don't know of the time when that hypothetical was true to where everybody in school had guns and then there was all this violence, so they stopped. But we do know that schools, these large events, right? Those are places where you're not allowed to have firearms. So now your two things are the problem, or three things. Now you can have a person who's not involved in the show or the festivities, what have you, not involved in whatever's going on in the school day. You can have this person decide, I want to hurt a lot of people. I'm going to go to this place or that place for whatever reason, right? It doesn't need to be like, I'm going into a gun free zone. But
Right, right.
right? It could be there's somebody in that school I don't like. There's a type of people in this place I don't like. Um, there's a lot of people at this concert, so I want to make a statement. Now, two things are happening after you have this problem, which we have all over America at any given time, right? We have all over the world at any given time. The people there that are innocent don't have a way to protect themselves. And then two, because they don't have a way to defend themselves, they are basically sitting ducks and relying on the hired security or law enforcement, which are limited, right, to where they can be at any given time and how many of them can be used to stop the threat. They're limited to relying on those people. And when something happens, we have issues where we've seen a school shooting where we have these guys have cameras and we see them running away from the danger, right? Where if I'm standing there with my wife and my daughter, I'm not running away from the danger. Plain and simple. That they mean something to me. Now I might run away from somebody else's wife and kid. I don't know. I haven't been in the situation. I really hope that that's not in me to do that.
Right, right.
But until you're faced with that situation, you don't know. There's nothing that wouldn't stop me from standing in front of a firing squad, a pack of rabid pit bulls, right? Anything to protect my wife and my daughter, right?
Right.
And I believe you're the same way. Armed with a gun, a knife, these two fists, hands
Right.
tied behind my back, whatever it is,
If I
I'm.
gotta
I,
take off this Apple Watch and just
come on, bro.
slap, just
Throwing
it's
hats,
a
I'm
slapping.
throwing these dang balloons, brother. Anything. And so not that people being armed doesn't make me feel like I'm necessary. It it wouldn't it doesn't make me feel safer, right?
Hmm.
I'm responsible for my own safety,
Mhm.
right? But in places where not necessarily open carry, but even concealed carry, where we know that it's legal, where if I'm a criminal and I'm like in this area, people can have firearms, and it's maybe a 40% chance if I just grabbed any person in this place, they would have a firearm. And not only would they possibly have it, say if I grab the person who doesn't have it, a person next to them probably would have a firearm. I'm less likely to do that, whatever that thing is that I'm trying to do, right?
I think that's a really really good point. I think incredibly valid, and I have no.
I think that's the best way to answer that specific question, because in the school example, now I was gonna ask you if you meant students. It kind of didn't matter, um, but because then we start talking about, well, if these are children versus adults, la da da da. But when people brought up the idea of the teachers or hired armed security, things of that nature, people kind of freaked out, um, because we're just like, we'll just stop the violence from happening, but we can't. I went to school in Woodland Hills, and you know the greater Los Angeles area.
Yeah, yeah.
Woodland Hills, nobody, when we would go to like man, I wish I could remember all the different schools we played, but any of the schools in LA,
Hmm.
when we would drive out there, you would just hear people talking about, oh, we got to play the ghetto school, right?
Mm.
People making jokes about like, oh, there's going to be gangs there and hopefully you
Yeah,
won't get shot, stupid stuff like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That never happened, right? I was on the
Right.
drum line all 4 years, went to every football game. Everyone we went to LA, then at one time they threw rocks at our bus when we left. One time at my school,
Ban all rocks.
right, 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 right. At my school in Woodland Hills,
Yeah.
we had people get shot inside of the school,
Mm.
and we had people get shot at the bus stop across the street from the school. We have multiple shootings. We have basically a shooting every single year at Taft High School. And it was like, yo, what school do I go to? Like,
I
this is
mean, but come on, we ain't gonna get into the race thing, but let's keep it. Let's just keep it real. Like
Mhm.
the whole school shooting thing. That's
uh,
certain type of people.
Uh-huh.
that are more in line with Woodland Hills and as a high school. Now, if you said they was having a twerking contest, I'm like,
Stop,
okay, well, I know.
stop. all, all I'm saying is those would not necessarily have been classified as a school shooting, what we naturally think. Those were more personal beefs, right? Happening at, we had a function, it's either a football game, somebody rolled up on somebody, or after school, somebody got something going on and somebody ran up to see them. But it's like that can happen anywhere. And it just so happens, I'm pretty sure those schools down in Los Angeles that we would go to had plenty of problems. But me as the guy in the drum line, I didn't have any reason to be
Yeah,
afraid.
yeah,
Um, when I go into, I've taken a trip down to Texas. I've lived in Georgia. Not Atlanta. I'm not familiar. We didn't spend time in Atlanta. We were like Southeast Georgia, and I prefer that much better because it's very similar to California, but like in a way.
hmm,
It's like country California.
hmm,
Um, there's just a different. You run into people all the time that have a gun right on their hip. You run
yeah,
into people and just when you're into like guns, you kind of look and you can see when somebody has like an imprint if they're carrying on, and you
yeah,
can kind of you just see it
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you just understand. In Arizona, my grandpa was like had guns, and I never shot him. I just knew he had guns. He was like a cowboy. Basically, he's a cowboy. Everywhere he went, he had his gun on him.
He
Ah,
was, huh?
ain't no Arizona Cowboys. Knock it
He
off, boy.
was, huh?
Get that out of here, boy. Hey, anything that'll get you down to the range and get you your first little situation on you. I got you, boy. Um,
But hold on, real quick. So I do want to
yeah,
add something in because
yeah,
I when I do hear these conversations spoken of, there is a very big distinction on just being armed and being armed to that next level, to that military level. So to you, answer me this now.
yeah. Well, I don't know what you mean. Are you talking about the type of weapon or the
Type,
amount
yeah,
of weapon?
the type of weapon. So
Okay.
basically, it's one thing having a handgun. It's another thing, and I won't even look ridiculous trying to blurt out uh styles and types and all of that. I'll just say
You can say rifle shot.
having a higher caliber, um higher rounds per minute weapon, right?
Okay. Yeah, there's virtually rounds per minute is virtually not a thing, but there's higher capacity because we don't have machine guns and we don't
Okay.
have like multi-round. You it's virtually impossible to get a 3-round burst.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
those
so
are
so what is
military weapons, and that's why when people compare like what a civilian AR-15 is to a
yeah,
military one, it
yeah.
actually doesn't connect because those firearms perform in a way
Mm.
that's meant for the battlefield, and they wouldn't use necessarily mine. That's why some people that are real gangster about the Second Amendment are like, I should be able to have that too. But that could be a different conversation
So
for another.
so so side note. So what am I seeing online when there's somebody with a gun on Instagram or on YouTube and he's like, "Yo, watch this. This is that 50 caliber," blah, and he's like, "Da-da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da." I'm like, so what's that?
Okay. Well,
What he got?
well, if you
What's the switch he got? What is that?
okay, see the switch is a modification that in most places is illegal. You're not supposed to have
Hmm.
that. Okay.
But
The
it's out there.
that well, yeah, I mean, lots of stuff is out there. Pipe bombs is out there. Uh, so people have done these things to make the weapon perform in a certain kind of way. And when you see, for example, because everybody talks about school shootings, that's usually not what you find there.
Hmm.
If you could find one where somebody had that, I'm not going to say they didn't,
Right.
but I'm going to say you're probably going to have to look pretty hard to find that. Usually those people, they're using, it doesn't matter that it really actually doesn't matter because you're relatively close to the people in these situations. So it doesn't matter that whether they had a handgun or a rifle, although the rifle is the thing that's, demonized, or a shotgun, right? It doesn't matter if you had an AR-15 style rifle or a like the other type, like a hunting rifle, let's
Hmm.
say. It none of those things would matter when you walk into a classroom where nobody's more than 20 feet away from you and you just start firing.
Hmm.
As a matter of fact, any of those weapons can do essentially the same amount of carnage when you're trying to hurt. And a shotgun might actually be better, but people don't use them. Even when people have them, they generally don't. They might have it, or they'll just use the rifle first, or they'll use a handgun. There's,
But
there's not necessarily a high level of people using shotguns to commit mass murder. I don't
so
know. I don't
so
know
like
why.
in those situations, you don't even feel like, even if it was just a capacity, right?
Hmm.
I mean, you only can carry
Like
so much
California,
stuff.
we're limited to 10 rounds per
Yeah. So
magazine.
so so you don't even feel like what? Okay, let me start asking questions.
Yeah.
Legally,
Hmm.
what is what's the largest magazine that can be purchased for a rifle?
In California, 10.
No,
10
in,
rounds.
in US.
Oh,
Like, I
well,
mean, like, I'm saying, like,
yeah.
which one has the highest? Like, which state, basically?
I don't know what state, but let's just go with Arizona or South Carolina. They
Okay.
seem to be relatively, friendly to firearms. Um, I would say that I've seen the standard is 30 rounds.
Okay.
So for different types of weapons, it's different. The standard for a rifle is 30 rounds, right? The standard for like a hunting rifle is 5 rounds. You can get 10, um, because if you're out hunting, sometimes there's limits of you can only have 3 rounds in your rifle at a time because you shouldn't be out there just you mess up the ecosystem, right? So
Yeah.
you need to be very focused and you need one shot, one kill. You don't want to scare the animals so they never move around the way they're supposed to.
Right.
So you're limited there, and there's a reason for that. But generally those rifles are about 5 rounds, maybe. Shotguns are 7 to 8. Handguns, California, 10, and then 10 or less. Some are like only 8. Revolvers are 6, some are 7, and there's a few 8 round revolvers that I know about. And then you'll have handguns, which vary considerably. I mean, you go from 7 rounds in California, 10 is the max, but the same fire handgun in California, in the other states version of it, can have 12, 15, 17. You can do extended magazines. But to get to the point,
30.
the amount of rounds,
Let's just say
I've
30.
I've seen extended magazines that go 50 rounds,
Okay, let's say 50.
100.
Okay, let's just go with 50. 50,
Yeah,
50 is a
yeah.
decent number, decent round number.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's in the magazine. So let's
Yeah,
just say someone just really wanted to do some serious carnage. They got, you know, 5 magazines in the backpack, right?
yeah.
All right.
Hmm.
So that would be, 250 rounds, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
If that person was limited, let's just say globally, and I know this is all over the, I know.
It's okay.
Let's just say across the US, 10, right? Never went over 10, right?
Hmm.
No matter
Hmm.
no matter the gun, 10 rounds.
Hmm.
That would mean that, what I say, 10, so that would be 20. They'd have to have 25 magazines or weapons to that. So 25 magazines versus 5 magazines, right?
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you kind of hopefully see where I'm going. My point
Yeah.
is, if this remind me of my not mine, Chris Rock's joke about
Yeah,
bullet
yeah. Charging for bullets. Yeah, yeah. I'm
charging
with
for
you.
bullets. It's like
As
if
someone who purchases ammo a lot, they are damn near doing it right now, bro. It is getting more and
it's
more
getting
expensive.
expensive.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, go ahead.
So do you see any possible resolution in you're not going to stop somebody killing one person, right? You're not going to stop somebody from going off and killing two or three people.
Hmm.
However, it is very different when someone in a backpack, before the cops can even get there, can potentially let off 100, 200, 300 rounds
Hmm.
from one weapon.
Yeah.
Much more difficult to let off that many rounds, which put that many more people in danger if the limit was 10. So I don't know if I'm saying the right thing, but anywhere
No,
in there, do
I
you
hear you.
even hear a
I hear you.
resolve?
Well, I'll tell you this: if you're in a gun free zone and waiting on the police, yeah, it's much more difficult for that person to get even one mag off if potentially 30 to 40% of the people have firearms.
Well, that'd be 30 to 40% of the people. Well, all the people are
Tw-
allowed to, but I mean
15%.
in
15%.
in any given group, especially as you move throughout the country, even though it's legal now, I'm pretty sure if you go to Manhattan at any given time in Times Square, I don't think that you got 40% of the people strapped.
No, no, no. That's what I'm saying. That the Second Amendment is not, especially in a place like New York,
Mhm.
California. There's several states where having a fire, and there's lots of rules. And the Second Amendment folks feel like our Second Amendment is very, very infringed upon. There are so many places, even when you have the legal right to carry, you go through the paperwork, you pay the taxes, which we think is illegal. To can when it you're saying shall not be infringed, but you make laws, you limit, you tax. California, they just put a blanket tax of no matter what you're doing, an additional tax of 11%. So you go to buy a firearm, you go to buy ammo, you already pay the tax. You pay the amount, you pay the tax, and now an additional 11% tax is just across the board on everything. So
Wow.
we already feel like, yo, you are way past what's allowed. You've limited our capacities. All this stuff is always in the Supreme Court. There's so many things going on in the Supreme Court trying to figure out, you know, where we're at. And every state is different. It's
Yeah.
kind of like the blessing and the curse of having 50 separate states is
Hmm.
like in Arizona, one state over, they have a totally different philosophy about firearms and the freedom to have them and what that means compared to California. And then in California, you have Santa Clarita that's just 10 minutes away from me, where their sheriffs are much more likely to give you a concealed carry permit than Los Angeles County. You, you know what I'm saying? Like they change all, they go all over the place.
Right.
So the thing is, if somebody had 25 magazines in their backpack, it would be very difficult to get all of those rounds off if there was someone there to protect the people. If you had five larger magazines, it would still be very difficult in both situations to get through the same amount of 10 shots. It would be difficult to do that without being stopped if the populace was able to be armed, because you wouldn't know who was armed. You wouldn't know if only 5% of the people were armed and you went into a bar, right? You go into a bar, and you see a security guard. You might shoot the security guard, but now you walk in there and one out of every 10 people might have a firearm, right? You go you go into a place where there's a security guard outside, but no one, there's a big sign outside that says there's no guns in here. We make people walk through a metal detector.
Mhm.
You shoot the armed security outside, there's nothing anybody can really do to you besides, charge you and jump on you, and then you can shoot them as they do that. It's one of those things where it's like the the bad person with the gun is going to always be the bad person with the gun. You can't stop that part. Um, and if you make it to where somehow you can not have any weapons in your state or your country, there's no such thing as firearms, then the bad guy with the knife, when your police force only has batons, the bad guy with the knife is going to run around stabbing everybody in the neck with the knife until you hit him with the baton, and he's still going to stab y'all too. Or he'll attack the police officer first, and then he can go and have. There's a guy in New Orleans that just drove a Ford Lightning through a crowd and killed however many people, adults, children, and if and what that was about, I have no idea. But there's because of that, there should not be, as dangerous as a motor vehicle is. It's a very dangerous thing. I don't want cars to be limited to where they can only go the speed limit. I don't want cars to be limited to where they have, you know, bumpers on them or balloons around them to make them soft so that they don't hit people, or they're so low to the ground that if they bump into a person, they can't run them over.
Yeah.
I'm not. That's over and beyond, right? Whatever's. If we really get down to it, the most serious thing could be like, what's going on with people? Why do we think this is okay? Why do people think this is what they should do? And we can address those things. I don't think that's going to solve the problem. I think that, just like you mentioned, there's evil. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And man, I feel a lot safer knowing that evil's running around, knowing that people can be, um, that they have this equalizer to meet and defeat that evil. If they come across it, at least they have the chance. They might catch you slipping and you lose, right? But man, it would be it's a lot different than not having a chance.
That makes a lot of sense. So I pulled this up, and we're gonna end with this. But you
Yeah,
already know.
talk
You
to me.
already know we're gonna have to have another. I love
Oh
what
my
you said.
goodness,
Like, we should do
series,
this,
series.
man,
We
because this
we can
is,
spend one, just so we say it right now, so that it's here. We can
yeah,
spend one purely on the racial thing. We can
yeah,
spend one purely on the political part of it with the laws. We can
yeah.
spend it purely on just a day at the range, just learning. Because whatever people feel about it, man, you should at least know.
That's true.
You should at least know, and you don't have to touch one. You don't have to shoot one.
Yeah,
But just for example, say for example, you hate guns, you don't want nothing to do about it. Hang out with me one day. Let me show you how they operate. So, say for example, you're in the bank just minding your business, and a crazy person busts in there and starts shooting, and it's a goofball, and they drop the gun, and it slides all the way across the room to you, and you're the only person. And then you could be like, like you don't. This is a foreign object to you, man.
all right, all
Right?
right, all right.
Listen, you never know. You never know.
You never
Because you
know.
never know when you're going to be sitting in school and some crazy person kicks the door in and locks it behind them, and now you're stuck in this room with this psychopath. Nobody knows that,
Right.
that's going to happen. So I think, and then sometimes I get in, different conversations take on different things. So we mentioned about men protecting. That's not a thing to even tell women for a second that they shouldn't be 100% involved in this. That's just an easy way to talk to people on a primal level that we kind of all understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like, ladies, it's not only to have in your purse when you're walking, to your car late at night. There's so much. So we can talk about just knowing how firearms operate, different types of firearms. We can,
Yeah.
yeah, I
I
love
love.
it. I
I
love
love.
it. What were you gonna show about Arizona?
Yeah. Awareness needs to be. uh, at the forefront with a lot of
Yeah.
things. And so I pulled this up because you brought up, Arizona and how they're
Yeah.
pretty cool about guns. And
Hmm.
so and this is I know this is going to drum up a certain amount of response.
Hmm.
Hopefully we can you know put a pin in it, and everybody will want to listen to the next episode we do to kind of hear where
Yeah.
this conversation goes,
Okay.
because kind of what I was, you were making great points as far as like, well, yeah, if there is the bad man with the gun, it's
Hmm.
a lot better if 30 to 40% of the people are also armed. They're going to have a much harder time getting those rounds off. They're going to have a much harder time, you know, committing a ton of carnage because now there's some force back at you.
Yeah.
Um, However, I'll say, looking at this, because I never know until I pull something up. This makes me feel like, though that is true, it's still very situational, just like your crazy situation about the gun sliding across the floor in the middle of Carl's Jr. Because you have Arizona. This is in 2020, 2021 is what it's talking about. So it's a few years
Yeah.
old, just what I found, looking real quick. But it said that they had 30 mass shootings since 2020,
Hmm.
right? I actually I don't see the date of when this specific. Maybe this is recent because this is a Sandy Hook thing, and it's like it's in your state, so they have data in everyone's state. So maybe it is more recent than I realized. So there's been 30 mass shootings, and guns are the second leading cause of death of children.
Hmm.
The second leading cause. Arizona had the 17th highest firearm death rate in the U.S. That seems pretty high given the other types of cities that we have, and other types of violence that are out there.
But
So
you saying Arizona, the state, right?
yes,
Okay. Okay. So the
um,
whole state of Arizona is number 17.
17th highest.
And then what does it say under that? I can't see it.
It says Arizona had the 17th highest firearm death rate in the
Oh,
U.S.
okay.
in 2021.
And then what does it say under second?
And then the second one says the gunfire was the second leading cause of death for Arizona children in 2021.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm saying, hold on, let's look at some other. So 55 children died by gunfire in 2021. 879 Arizonians died by suicide with a firearm in 2021, and 8 mass shootings happened in 2023. Okay, so this is pretty recent. So I'm saying all that just to say, though I'm not saying that you're wrong, that likely anybody, no matter how many rounds you're trying to get off or what damage you're trying to inflict, if you have the people that are there, a large majority or a small majority or at least a willing majority of
Mhm.
them are armed as well, where they can have some pushback and defend those other people that aren't, that's always going to be a better situation.
Yeah.
But looking at those numbers, I can't specifically say that it automatically puts the community in a better situation just because we have more guns around, just because we're more friendly about gun freedoms. It's not like, well,
You,
look at Arizona as, it's not like you can say look at Arizona as like a testing ground. They understand the law, they respect the Second Amendment, they
mm,
are very liberal with uh, gun permits, and if you look at their deaths, they're very low in deaths by firearms. There's been barely any mass shooting. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like you
mhm.
see that 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 liberal level of firearms acceptance doesn't always lead to a lower level of firearms deaths. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's still a
Yeah,
problem.
yeah, but I hear you, but we we can dig into those numbers on a different one. But say, like, for example, like one thing when we're talking about children,
Mhm.
are those children from 0 to 17? That's a thing that happens. Are we counting gang violence as like that? If there's a say for example, I'll just make a dramatic example. If two gangs got in the middle of the street and just start shooting at each other,
Mhm.
are you counting four people being hit as a mass shooting? Because in our mind, not mine, but in the masses mind, when you say mass shooting, we imagine, like you were saying, somebody running into a concert, like the Vegas shooting,
Yeah.
which, I mean, how often does that happen? It doesn't
Right.
happen often. That's the point. We can talk about it later.
Right.
But where you kill like 50 people or something, I forget the numbers. But mass shooting can be four people shot, not necessarily four people killed. Um, and that happens in drive-bys all the time, right? Are we talking about gang violence? Are we talking about people running into schools? Are the children actually children's age? Sometimes they go up to they use up to 19 years old. I don't know why,
Yeah. It's
but
high.
they sometimes use up to 19 years old to count as children deaths, and that's a curious thing that happens. And then
Well,
also,
real
were
quick.
those
So
done
I don't.
in? Oh, I'm sorry. What?
So real quick, I don't know all the answers, but I will say, and
Yeah,
just I'll give you this so you can, um, finish up. I'm gonna let you close this
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah,
So this says mass shootings in Arizona. So it says Arizonans have faced significant gun violence tragedies on January 8th, 2011. That's pretty old, but anyway,
yeah. No,
Congresswoman Gabby Clifford and
Gabby
18 other
Giffords. Yeah, yeah,
were shot in a mass shooting in Tucson. Six
yeah.
people were killed, including a 9-year-old girl. Seven were left seriously wounded, including Giffords, um, further worshippers of the Buddhist temple, blah, blah, blah,
She,
blah.
she's a politician in Arizona. That was a big story.
Yeah, so
She
then
got
this
kind of
other one
survived. It
was,
was a big deal.
yeah, that sounds. And the other one was back in 1991. So this is interesting. It's showing us some of their older ones. So I'm not sure the dates and whatnot on these that it lists here in 2003, but it says 8 mass shootings. I agree. I don't know if that's 420. I no clue.
Yeah, and then are they done in gun free zones? Right.
Mm,
That's a big deal because it doesn't matter how many people can have guns. You know, generally, if every time a mass shooting takes place, it's in a place where, because if I'm a law abiding citizen, law abiding gun owner, and I have a concealed carry permit or I'm able to, open carry my firearm, and then I walk into a school or some place where it's prohibited, I am no longer, just so we understand, I am no longer a law abiding gun owner. I'm no longer a law abiding citizen. Um, when there are places that prohibit you from having your firearm, you cannot legally enter those places. So
mm,
with your firearm. So if these shootings are taking place in places like that, which I don't know, I have no idea. I
yeah,
do not have any idea. Um, then that would kind of make those numbers the same as any other place with the strictest gun laws.
yeah,
So dude, that sounds like a fun time to just look all the statistics of different states, and maybe we can do that and like already kind of have it, so we're just not like shooting in the dark.
yeah.
To kind of figure out what it looks like. I'm down 100%,
Well,
and
dude,
and I don't really have a closing other than, man, um, the Second Amendment. Like I said, there's so much more to talk about
yeah,
just in itself. I mentioned how I don't think it's the same as race. The easiest way I could say that without starting a whole nother conversation is that um, anything dealing with race, before any race, we're all humans, we're all men
yeah,
or women, but we're all humans, and um, every human's natural proclivity is to defend themselves against hurt, harm, or danger.
yeah,
So it's much different. And when we do talk about the racial component, I have a lot of different historic like facts about why they people knew to try to say only for white males, right?
mm,
when they made those specific
yeah,
things, they knew what they were doing because you because you cannot have people subservient under you, and treat them in certain ways when they have the great equalizer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plain and simple.
That's a fact.
Plain,
Dude, you have
my man,
you've opened my eyes, which is great. Like
my
that's
man.
why I knew you would, which is why I want to have this conversation. You
No, man,
have
I'm glad we did it.
illuminated. I actually think there's some things that you illuminated that happened in between the lines that may not have even been intending to, but I'm like,
I love
oh,
it.
okay, and I think that is that's what this is about, man. That's what, I
Come
keep telling
on.
people it's a podcast about humans for humans. The idea of that is that AI can only give you so much. Human intelligence,
Come
us
on.
talking to each other, us listening to each other, us voicing our concerns with each other, that's what really allows us to develop and progress, not developing AI. You know what I mean? Like as a society, we are better with each other, and so there's some conversations about like even like magazine limits and what types of guns, and how you talked about how the military guns are um, uh, calibrated a certain way so they perform a different way on the battlefield than what's allowed here. Like all that is, as a novice, we don't know that.
Yeah.
We don't
Precious.
know that. Like I know that everything ain't an AR-15, but I do know that much. But
Yeah.
there's a lot that you're just like, yeah, why that? What are you using that for? Why do you? You know what I mean? Like, they're questions without answers, and so I think we're gonna bring people a lot of answers with this little gun series we about to do. So,
Come on,
my
man.
guy, I appreciate you so much.
Love
Thanks for staying on much later than we expected. I guess that's what we always do. Um,
Period.
but in the
You in a
outro,
long time,
hey,
man.
pod is good
All the time.
and all the time.
All is good.
My man, take care.
Salute, baby.
Be
Much love.
blessed.